He's in a bad place, right? Between a rock and a hard place. And yet this song is a song of praise. And he reflects how he's seeing God reveal, works close to the broken heart and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Today's a gorgeous day if you go outside. It's one of those like ideal perfect days. And do you know what you see when you look up at the sky? You see my favorite color. So I've always said my favorite color is blue, but it's that light, bright, deep blue when you look up straight up, not by the sun, but on a cloudless sunny day, and it's just that deep, a cerulean. I remember my mom had a cerulean dress she would wear to church sometimes. That's when I learned the word cerulean. I was like, that's way better than blue. No, but I love that. But you know what you can't see when you look straight up at the sky? The thousands of stars that are shining. Right now. Right? Wait till night. Look up at the sky. What do you see? I mean, you see a dot to dot. People have been connecting those lines for centuries. Right? Going even further up in the mountains when there's less light, and all the more start popping out. You start seeing the Milky Way, and you start seeing all sorts of things. Because the context has changed. See, God's goodness, His character, His purposes are always there. Always there in life. Sometimes it takes the darkness for us to be able to see it clearly. He's always working in our lives. But man, when we're suffering, we can see Him more clearly. He comes out, and that's how He shows up in the Bible. He's always good. He's always working in our lives. But when we suffer, that's when all the distractions are away, and we can see Him a little bit more clearly. So don't miss what He's doing. I quoted C.S. Lewis last week. I got another one in for you guys this week. This is again from The Problem of Pain. This is a famous quote. You might have heard it. It says, God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. It is His megaphone to rouse a deaf world. This has a little bit of difficulty that comes to it because it feels like God's trying to get our attention when we're going through something. My point is, don't miss what God is doing. He's always working. Even if you aren't suffering right now, don't miss it. Don't miss it. Because the stars are shining even when it's bright. God's goodness is always there. The current is always flowing. Whether you're in the boat, whether you're holding on to a piece of driftwood, don't miss what He's doing. Let Him reveal Himself through suffering. Second thing that He does in the way that He uses suffering is that He refines us. This one's the uncomfortable one. Where not just distractions fall away during our suffering, all of our false gods fall away when we're suffering. Suffering, I might be able to make the statement that any suffering is just revealing something that isn't strong enough to hold our hopes. Right? Go back to the metaphor of a shipwreck, right? You hold on to driftwood. Well, you now know that ship is not strong enough to take you where you were going, right? Because you are holding onto a piece of it as it's floating in the water. But we can say that about every suffering, couldn't we? Right? If it's a suffering with a lack of money, and we're really, cutting it close, well, money itself isn't going to take us as far as we hope it would, right? Or there's not enough to go around. Or if it's our health, it's like, man, I hope my body will get me further than where it is. That it's not taking me as far as I need it, right? Or loss of loved ones, right? It's like that relationship, I hope would be longer. I hope there would have been something more there. Suffering does is it really helps us recognize our limits, our inability to get where we're going, and it really exposes all of the false gods that we might be holding on to because they fall flat. In suffering, they aren't coming through. In the Bible, when there's a great famine, I'm thinking of Elijah. There's the great Baal. They're saying, come. He hasn't come through. He can't do what you're asking him to do. Same thing in our life. We just have different gods that we call them. When we suffer, it's the false gods aren't showing up. So we're empty. We're empty. The Bible talks over and over about this process of God disciplining those He loves. Hebrews 12 is a great passage to read. Let's read the second one. This is the very beginning. So does anyone know what's in Hebrews 11? It's called the Hall of Faith. So it's got all these Old Testament characters and how they demonstrate faith with God. So coming off this really high, the author of Hebrews, who's anonymous, we don't know who wrote it, for sure, all good guesses. But right coming off of that, it says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, all these people who've gone before us in the faith we follow God, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. So his mind says, all these people have had great faith. Let's make sure that we're not leaning on false gods, that we're not being trapped by things that are not God. And then he goes further and presses the issue and says, God's going to help you do this. It won't necessarily like it. He says, moreover, we have all had human fathers who disciplined us, and we respected them for it. How much more should we submit to the Father of spirits in earth? They disciplined us for a little while as they thought best, but God disciplines us for our good, in order that we may share in his holiness. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. The whole concept is that God uses difficulties, the hardships, the sufferings in our life to train us to build us up. Same concept as going to a gym, lifting weights, or so I'm told. Your muscles hurt after you sorry. I haven't been to the gym, just not a while. Your muscles hurt after a while, and that's because they're growing. They're becoming something. The author of Hebrews is reminding us the same way. You can trust God's discipline because it's not punishment, right? It is training. When you have surgery, there's a pain as well, but it's a pain that you subject yourself to in order to be put back together the right way. It's not a torture. There's not an execution. There's not, I want you to feel this. It's, I'm going to reshape you and strengthen you so that you can become something better. In fact, he says, peace, righteousness, and holiness in this passage. That's what we want. That's what we want. We want to be good. We want to be good enough. We want to have peace without chaos. God wants the same thing. He's going to build us towards it. So as hard as it is to hear, when we're suffering, all of those false gods are away. Everything else that we're putting our hopes in that's not God, those all fall flat. And if we're willing to hear and willing to see it, God will build us. He will build us toward peace, toward righteousness, towards the holiness that he wants for us. All right, so we got through suffering, God is going to reveal himself. God is going to refine us. He's also going to redeem the world. Here's the fascinating part, I think. If you're a newbie to Christianity, you don't know what the Bible is, you don't know who Jesus is, and you just start reading the text, you get to the cross, right? And you say, time out. This is the all-powerful God who created all things. He enters into his creation and then he gets killed by his creation? I don't know if I want to follow that. It does make sense, right? But if you've been reading the entire Bible, this is like the literary climax where everything has been building to this point. Because just the cross takes the depth of human suffering, death, and evil in the world, and brings it to a point. Like, what is more tragic, more disappointing, more frustrating than creation who's been given free will by a God who created it, than that creation killing that God, using that free will to bring death to the God who has created the world in order to bring life. Like, that's the ultimate. I can't think of something that would be more tragic, that would feel like more of a corruption of something that has been more of a rebellion against the God than the people who have free will using it to kill and bring death, the thing that they brought into the world, to the Creator himself. And then on the other hand, what could be more loving than a God who says, I will endure all of that in order to be with those very people that are killing me. Right? Like it's different that he redeems the world through suffering, right? Because it's through his death on the cross that he forgives our sins, right? Like, what amount of love could be displayed more so than someone who says, through the process of you killing me, hating me, bringing all this evil on me, I will forgive you in order that I can be with you. Ooh, I almost can't fathom that, right? See, that's the climax of the book. It's been building all the way toward that. And then there's the resolution at the end, like at the end of the movie, and everything kind of fits. Yeah, that's the new life. That's the redemption, right? There's this tension, it builds, and then through his death on the cross, now there's life that is offered, and now it starts bringing up resurrection life. guys in marriage relationships or close friendships, if one of you is having a bad day and the other just has things to do, it's not the most loving thing to kind of break, you have a bad day, but we gotta do this, right? We gotta get going. The loving thing, right? The thing that you can counsel on is like, wait, if someone is saying this, let them say it, right? We're doing these care small groups, right? It's talking about extreme listening, right? Showing up and asking them questions, letting them know, I hear you. I feel that's empathy, right? Where you say, empathy is let me feel this with you. That's a loving thing to do. When you come alongside someone and you don't say, great, sorry, I had a tough time, but we really got to get going. You know? It's not, let me adjust things so I can be with you in this. Okay, now let's walk forward together. That's the loving thing to do, as opposed to just staying separate. One is a much more close way, where emotionally you'll be closer. That's who our God is. Do you realize that when I was a kid, I'd say, why did he have to suffer? I don't understand. If he made the universe like this, can he just forgive us like that? You know, like, what are all these weird rules where it's like, yeah, he had to die for us? It's like, did he have to? Here's the answer. He didn't have to. He chose to. It's just his love wanting to be with us. Yeah, I was getting too loud. I was getting too loud. They turned off the mics. Say, don't say this part. Don't say this part. Don't put it online. You know, otherwise people are gonna know. No, our God chose to. Is this gonna work right? Well, we're gonna try. I don't know. He put batteries in. Is it not working?
What's that? It's not working.
We're wired.
The wire's not working in the hinge.
It's not. Not today, Satan.
There we go.
Now, God chose to be with us in our suffering. And see, this to me is way more satisfying, right? Because God could have said, here's your ticket to some other place, not in the world, right? You guys have corrupted my world so much, but guess what? I've been a new place. Here, come join my train, and we'll go all in the Polar Express to whatever, to Mars, whatever we want. That's what preaching that says nirvana, right? That says, here, you can elevate yourself to a different spiritual plane, and then you don't even have to worry about all this mess that you've made. God doesn't say that. God's not saying forget about us. He's saying that is actually important. What you're experiencing, what you're feeling is real. I see it. I'm going to go in there with you, and we're going to go out together. Right? Like to me, this is, I get all sorts of mailers in the mail, like coupons, and I just throw them on, right? But some of them are good, right? Sometimes there's like coupons for free fries at McDonald's or something. That's not a real one. That's the app. But you get something where it's like, well, I'll use that. Like I actually will use that because I go to that store and there's other ones that are like 30% off with the purchase of 2 at regular price and at least $200. I'm not going to use that. Like that, like cool, that sounds good. I'm not going to me, if God said, here's the solution to all your pain and suffering, and all you have to do is just come with me to this other world, universe, and I'll be there. It's like, I don't even know if I need that. Like I'm not trying to leave. I have problems that I have to fix, right? But that's not what he said. He said, I'm going to come into you next to your problems, in the midst of your suffering. I'm going to defeat it. I'm going to experience everything, and then I'm going to create new resurrected life through it, right? I think of trees that sprout after a massive wildfire, on the hills. There's going to be new life. I'll buy that. I was like, I shop there. That's what I want. You know what I'm saying? Like if I'm creating what salvation would be, I would want this world to be redeemed. Not for me to just get away from it. It's because it's so real. Because our suffering is real. And God says, I know. I'll be with you in it. That's what the cross says. It's with us. God wants to be with us. Love it. And so, Jesus on the cross showed us how this new life happens, this resurrected life. Again, maybe it's unexpected. It doesn't come from a conquering king that just makes everything happen. And here we go. It comes to this emptying of himself, this selfless love, and allowing himself to be subjected to other people's hatred and evil. And that's what resurrected life comes from. That's hard. So for us, if we want purposeful suffering, right? Not only are we paying attention to how God's revealing himself, not only are we allowing him to refine us and get rid of all these false gods that we've collected somehow or stuck on us, but we're also participating with God in the redemption of the world. Not all suffering is suffering that we can't do anything about. It is good to get out of suffering if we can. If there are bees that get out, that is good. Suffering is evil. Sometimes you are subjected to suffering. You did not choose it, or someone else is doing it to you. It's their sin that is hitting you, and you have no choice but to experience it. It's in those times we can have a posture that says, let me participate with Jesus on the cross. Let me give space. Suffering gives us space so that the resurrection life can grow up inside of us. If we want to be able to experience that life, we have to empty ourselves and love God to give us what He has to offer. But here's the thing. Resurrection life doesn't come from us. We can't generate it. We can't produce it. We can't make it. So whatever life we experience, it will feel different. You'll feel, that was what I was looking for. It's foreign to us, but it's good. It's peace. It's righteousness. It's holiness. It's the things that we want. So maybe not the way that we want it. We have to be able to see that and allow ourselves to experience this resurrection life that He has. That's what the cross gives us. When we read the New Testament, it talks a lot about Jesus' suffering. I think it's significant that none of the authors skip it. Like, Jesus died on the cross, but what happened 3 days later? He rose again. He defeated that. That wasn't the end of the story. It wasn't like, wow, that's so tragic. Great tragedy or something like that. Like, no. Like, that wasn't the end. And yet, every New Testament author doesn't skip over it. Right? Even Paul, even Peter, they say, he suffered on the cross. That was real. But then He also resurrected, and now there's life for us. I don't know if you guys remember, it feels like it was a long time ago, but about 6 months ago, one of the first pieces. The book is a letter that Peter wrote to kind of the church in general. It's probably like a circuit letter. But he talks a lot about Jesus' suffering and our participating in that suffering with Him. He talks specifically about the cross, but then he says He was alive, made alive in the Spirit. Remember that one passage where He proclaims and captives, His victory, and then talks about baptism, how we can enter into this life along with Him, and how there's glory and power. And then in chapter 4, I'm skipping this part. We don't have time. But rejoice inasmuch as you participate in the sufferings of Christ, so that you may be overjoyed when His glory is revealed. The story that Peter wants us to hear about Jesus' sufferings is that they're real, you participate in them, and at the end, through that, Jesus is making resurrected life. So that's the hope that we have. Very hard to see when we're in the midst of suffering. God is working. It's a whole nother driftwood. There is a current. God is working. He wants to reveal Himself to you, so look for Him. He wants to refine you, so let go of things and empty yourselves. He wants to redeem the world. Like, He's redeeming the world. We know that, right? You guys know that? Like, we're not just waiting for Him to come back and bring a new world, like this was all going away. Jesus is redeeming, actively redeeming the world. We're His hands and feet. What He started on earth, He's continuing through us. The means by which He does it is through the suffering on the cross. That's the center. So therefore, any time that we're suffering, we can say, okay, God, do what you want. Because I can tell you're moving. I can tell you're moving. What I want to leave us is just ask the question, a story that we want to tell about our suffering. We will suffer in life. That's what happens when we live in a broken world. That's what we talked about last week. We get to tell a story of what this means. How things are going. We get to tell how far close God is, whether we're seeing Him, whether we're not, whether it feels pointless, or whether it doesn't. We want to live God's love beyond ourselves. If our goal is for people to know who God is, we better be able to tell them who our God is, the truthful and honest ways. Because if we're not paying attention, if we're not seeing what He's doing in our suffering, we don't attach Him to our suffering, or He becomes a distant God, or a God who doesn't love. That's not where God is. That's not how He showed up in the Bible. We have to do the work to see Him, to recognize Him, to allow Him to do His work, and to allow our perspective to be changed. Sometimes this happens in the moment, sometimes this happens years down the road. This is our hope, that we serve a God who is using suffering for His purposes. So all of our suffering can be purposeful if we allow Him to work into it. That's the Bible basis. I'm going to give an illustration. So I've asked Eric to come up and just share. What's your story of suffering, and where do you see God?
So, about the time COVID started, life was great. And then This is
There we go.
okay. Okay. So, COVID came around. Everything was good except people walked to the house and everything being shut down. A couple months into that, I found out that my wife wanted a divorce, or she wanted out. She didn't care to wash. Didn't want the relationship. So for about a year, I did everything I possibly could to save the marriage, save my family, and during that point, uh, I don't think I've ever experienced pain like that. It was just suffering on a daily basis, and while I was going through that, I was I can remember coming home after a couple weeks after finding out and walking circles on my neck and just being I have a choice right now. I can choose to run away from God or I can choose to step into him. And as I'm walking around the deck, I chose to worship like that. Um, sorry. But I'm walking around the deck and I'm worshiping him in the hard times. And I'm sure my brother was well. If they saw me there, who's the crazy guy? Circling the deck. But so I chose to lean in him. And when I did that, I got more into the word. Got more into worship music. I was looking for podcasts on how to save my marriage. And just at that point, I was just growing so much closer to God. And I have so many stories about how he reached out to me. One of them, my wife at the time had just said some crazy mean stuff. And I can remember sitting in a parking lot crying. And through this whole period, as I was talking to God, he's like, I'm with you, I got this. I'm with you, I got this. And he would keep saying that. And when you're going through it, it's hard to see that. You're just like, not really, do you? Because this hurts worse today than it did yesterday. But I remember sitting there and I'm praying, and then all of a sudden I got, it was a huge booming voice, but it just came out of nowhere, and it's like, you still know that I'm God. That's true, you are, and I'm not, and you've been telling me that you're walking with me through this. Okay, I gotta trust. The divorce moved through, my ex moved away, took my 2 kids with her, and that didn't get me better. And then about a year after they left, my mother passed away. So it was like, is this ever going to stop? Because this really stinks. And then slightly, a little bit here and there, just after my mother passed, I ran into Catholic. And that was an absolute blessing. Of course, then I had a heart attack. So it was a rough couple years. The thing about all of this, though, is I was in that for so long. And I could see him moving and walking with me through the whole thing. So when the heart attack came, and after that, I had such a peace because I knew he was going to walk with me and he was going to be there. He didn't say it was going to be easy. He just said, I'm going to be there with you. And to have that comfort and that peace is just amazing. And like even now when things come up, it's like he's got it. If we believe in him and we're one of his kids, he's walking with us. So my daughter and I, we have the same one, and it's James 1:2-5. And it's consider it pure joy, brothers and sisters, when you face trials of many kinds. Let the testing of your faith allow perseverance. And let perseverance grow, or make you grow and mature and become whole. And if you lack, so that you're not lacking in anything. And then, if you're lacking in wisdom, that's communicate without prejudice. So we got that because we know we're going to face trials. There is going to be suffering in this world. He's going to be with us. And happiness is a choice. We can be happy in circumstances, but joy is something that comes from God. And He gives that to us. And we can see that, we can feel that, we can see that, and we can walk in that, no matter what is going on around us, because He's with us.
Sharing, appreciate that. And if you know anything about Eric, he's one. Oh yeah, kid. You know anything about Eric? He's got deep faith, and he's willing to let you in. So feel free to continue to ask and allow him to encourage you. You know, let's pray and then let's be encouraged at the table together. God, you are good all the time. Even when it's hard to say that, even when we don't see it or don't believe it, we know that you work in suffering. I mean, you chose to work through suffering. And there's a sense that you are closer because of that. You're not a distant God that we've got to struggle toward. You came to us. You entered into our struggle. Lord, that we might be next to you. So may we love you all the more. May we recognize your love for us. May you redeem all of our suffering, that it might be purposeful for your uses, God. That you might redeem the world, even through our suffering. Thank you, God. In your name we pray. Amen. All right, we talked a lot about the cross. That's what the communion table is. That's why we remember it. And this can be really tough. We're doing this part without the mic. I don't know if we yell here or not. But when we come to the communion table today, let us just be open. Willing to let those false gods settle. Willing to hear and see God as He wants to reveal ourselves. Willing to allow Him to use whatever we're going through for His purposes in order to redeem the world. On the night that Jesus was betrayed, He took the bread. After He had given thanks, He broke it and gave it to His disciples, saying, "This is my body, which is broken for you. Do this in remembrance of me." Same way after supper, Jesus took the cup. He said, "This cup is the new covenant which is in my blood. Do this as often as you drink it in remembrance of me." Let's come forward and take the communion.